So Finland and Sweden now, they want, and we just got word from former Vice President Biden celebrating this. They want to join NATO. Okay. Want you to comment below before I give you some numbers that might shock you. But, all right, I'm going to lead the witness here. No. Now,
let's tell you how we got.
Let me tell you how I got there. You might be wondering how I got here. Also, what's really important to note, maybe people don't understand, they don't think of this because we often just think of the welfare state. We think of that as a redistribution of wealth. The international military community and NATO and UN, that is an international redistribution of wealth, always at the cost of the American taxpayer, not at the cost of the Swedish taxpayer, not at the cost of the German taxpayer. When you're talking about international agreements, the numbers are not even close. It's thank you, United States, for allowing us to tag along and not making us states 50 through 90 at this point. You think Attila the Hun, you think Genghis Khan, you think the Ottomans would allow Canada or even Europe to exist if they had planes? So, Tuesday, and then we have Biden talking this morning, NATO's Secretary General announced that Finland and Sweden were one step closer after Turkey dropped its objections. And so this started the chatter of, should they be able to join? Here's the NATO Secretary General, who I believe is Norwegian, but talking about Finland and Sweden. It's easy to get mixed up, again, because these countries are inconsequential in the general history of the world.
We have just finished a very constructive meeting with President Erdogan, President Niinistö, and Prime Minister Andersson.
That sounds like he just mumbled a name because he couldn't say it.
And I'm pleased to announce that we now have an agreement that paves the way for Finland and Sweden to join NATO.
Yeah, I want that way paved with walls and moats.
Yes.
And gold.
It's not so much a paving as it is a renovation project. No, you don't get to join it. Well, you get to join NATO under some very specific terms, just to be clear. Yeah. And I'll lay out what those terms are. Hint, they can't meet them. Biden, former Vice President Biden, of course, was celebrating the move this morning in Madrid.
We invited 2 new members to join NATO. It was a historic act. Finland and Sweden, 2 countries with a long tradition of neutrality and choosing to join NATO.
Okay, no, Gerald, give it, just let me go here really quickly. I probably know more about NATO than you because I hate the things. NATO, 1949. Here's basically what it is, okay, without getting into complicating the issue. After World War II, after we had this struggle, right, people were concerned about the Soviets. Okay, it's an international military agreement. What does that mean? You join up. 2% of your GDP annually is put into NATO funding, which is basically NATO military spending at that point. It was supposed to be a military alliance that benefited everybody. We protected each other, right? So it was, if you pay this in, right? This is an installment plan here. You pay in, you get to be a part of the drawing pool if it needs to be used. Okay. There were a set number of nations who joined. Sweden and Finland, being pompous assholes and having bragged about being neutral for the last several decades, decided no. Well, guess what? You get to be neutral because we allow you to be. And we protect you so that you can claim to be neutral. Sweden, you're a nation that's given us nothing but birth control and gummy fish, okay? Nothing. Nothing. Couple of chefs. That's it. Okay, so let's go through the number. Historically, the United States has paid $13.5 trillion. Wow. $13.5 trillion with a T into NATO. In 2021, the United States spent more than $811 billion on NATO funding. That's 3.5% of the GDP. By the way, before we get to Finland and Sweden, we should boot the countries that aren't paying 2% of their GDP. And by the way, that's a lot of them. Okay? That's a lot of them. So now Sweden, having not paid into NATO for all of these years, going like, oh, things looking like they could get rough. We need protection. Yeah, well, you know how we didn't pay at all, and we bragged about how you guys were paying in the military-industrial complex, and we have all this socialized health care. Yeah, now we want in. Nope. You got a lot of back pay. A lot of back pay. So 2% is what the agreement is, at least in 2006. It was different before that. Okay, so it's tough to do some numbers because you're talking about the history of NATO, modern inflation, modern dollars. But in 2020 dollars, 2% of GDP for Sweden would be $10.8 billion a year. Wow. Finland, that would be $5.3 billion a year. So let's just lower that contribution to 1.5%, adjust the dollars to GDP for 1960. Because 49 to today, right? It wouldn't be fair to use the numbers for today because of inflation. So we'll just split the middle. Say 1960, adjust for inflation. This is the back pay. It would be $153 billion for Sweden. It would be $50 billion for Finland. And that would be extremely generous to them going back to 1960. In today's dollars, right, using their present GDPs, Sweden would owe $592 billion in back pay. Finland would owe $295 billion in back pay. So how about this? Look. Once you pay let's split the difference, $250 billion each in back pay. You know the money that you didn't pay in while we were protecting your sorry ass and you bragged about all of your social programs that you couldn't afford if you had to spend anything on your military? You pay the back pay, you walk out, get on your knees and apologize, and you allow us to paddle you.
Fair.
And then 2% and just because you didn't do it for a long time, you know what? In the United States, it's paid 3.5. You got to pay 2.5 at least going forward. If not, I hope you enjoy speaking one of the Soviet languages.
I think that it's not so sweet, Sweden and Finland. You're finished.
Yes.
Wow.
Think about this. Is a region. Think about this. When I say $811 billion just last year, that's your tax dollars. Picture your tax dollars side by side with an arrogant Norwegian, Finnish, Swedish, an arrogant prick talking about how the United States has this military-industrial complex. Look, hey, you made your bet. Hey, just, you know what? Stick with your bet. Stick with your bet. And I really get pissed off about this because I lived in Canada for years. I was raised in Canada, French-Canadian mother, from 3 to 18 years old, left as soon as I possibly could. And I would hear them brag all the time about, well, here in Canada, we have socialized healthcare. Yeah, and your military is, someone in a prop plane with a shotgun, all right? So the reason you're able to do this is because we haven't made you the 51st state, all right? And that applies to the entire world, and you are talking about trillions of dollars. So you think about the $48 billion just given to Ukraine right now. No, think about the $811 billion.
Yeah.
That's gone to NATO. Think about the 15, is it 15? How many?
$13.5 trillion.
$13.5 trillion. But at that point, it's just a rounding error.
Yeah.
Think of the $13.5 trillion that the American taxpayer has footed for arrogant European Nordic pricks who get to demand, when it's convenient for them, that we protect them, but in the preceding decades, bitch about how they're being protected. No.
Yeah.
No. You know what it is? It's the three little pigs. It's the three little pigs in Finland and Sweden. You're the one who built your house out of straw.
No, I think you're 100% right. You got to buy into the game now, right? We've been paying this bill forever, making sure that this enemy is put at bay. You can't just sit there and claim, oh, we're neutral. You're not neutral when troops start pouring over your borders. Of
course.
Sorry, my outfit is getting a little tawdry here. Yeah.
Well,
you can't be neutral then. And you can't come when things start getting dicey. You can't come to us and say, oh, hey, now we want your protection.
Right.
That's not possible. It's not going to happen. It is going to happen. It shouldn't happen. And by the way, right now what the president should do is say, hey, by the way, we've been overpaying. Every single country around here who has not been paying, part of your back pay goes to us. We've been overpaying.
And by the way, do you know the only time in history when nations started paying their fair share into NATO? Donald Trump.
Donald Trump. And I have an idea.
Yeah, that's true.
If these nations don't want to do it, that's perfectly fine. Have fun. Good
It should be
luck.
funneled right through us and into the hands of the Ukraine.
Yes.
Well, we'll turn it right around. And
Yeah,
drop
don't
it there.
worry. We won't keep it.
They are beyond reproach.
Yes.
Unbelievable.
It will go into the wrong hands.
So people hear about this and go, oh, yeah,
right
Sweden.
hands.
This is the kind of issue that most people don't really think about. $13 trillion.
It's insane.
$13 trillion. We don't have a problem with them. Well, we have a problem with the Pentagon saying they're going to perform, they're still going to perform abortions, of course.
Right.
But we don't have a problem with having an effective military. We have a problem with bureaucracy. We have a problem with red tape. And we have a problem with providing military aid to everybody else in the world. That's the issue. I think the United States should have a strong military. Do we need NATO? Hey, let me tell you why we don't need NATO, okay? We don't need oil from the Middle East anyway. We don't need wheat from the Ukraine or Russia. We don't need to have access to the pipelines. We don't need anything from over there. We could be entirely self-sustaining. We are America's bread basket. We are the world's bread basket. And We have more oil than we would know what to do with, by the way. If we just allowed our own, we could be an entirely self-sustaining country. The rest of the world could turn into an Acme cartoon-like crisp post-firecracker, and we would be fine. You all exist by the grace and the mercy of the United States. We would have been better off if former Vice President Biden walked up to the summit and said, yeah, I hear that, Sweden and Finland really want to...
Too bad.
Appropriate response.
And America's breadbasket is what they call my hips.
Yes.
Oh, jeez.
Watch Louder with Crowder live, Monday through Thursday, 10 a.m. Eastern.